But
All
you can
right.
go ahead and start.
I am live on my end. Welcome to the Humane Mind, episode 32. Oh man, now I'm getting a phone call. So we are again talking about religion. This should be the last stream on this before we switch topics. I just wanted to touch on whether religion is evil or not. And hang on a second, I'm getting a phone call. S-Man,
Yeah.
take it away.
All right, I'll start my stream. That.
Hello? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're live on the air. I am joined today with Humane Mind, JPM, and
Okay.
Brandon Padgett. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
I'm
How
doing
about
fine.
you?
I am doing pretty good.
All
I
right.
didn't feel good earlier today, but
Okay.
things turned around and, oh my god, I had a laughing riot today. A pure laughing riot. For those who don't know, we are going to be talking about whether or not religion is evil. I I wouldn't say specifically, oh yes, it is evil, but I'd
Actually,
rather
Tuesday would
say
work better for me.
there's some evil
If
things
that's
mentioned in the Bible, like the treatment of slaves,
okay.
but I will also say that, you know, there's some good things like that are mentioned, like do unto others as you'd
Oh,
have
okay.
done unto you.
All right, then I'll make it Monday and make sure that
But
the master is
anyway,
unlocked and all that.
um, yeah, so we're gonna be talking. This will be
Okay.
one of the last religion videos
All right.
or
Bye.
streams because I do have a response plan toward Zach. Um, so that will be the last religion video. This will be the last religion stream. Before we switch topics, I hope we can cover either economics or I don't know immigration or something, but
Yeah.
something that
And we
I don't
may
know that's different
even
from this.
switch over to those other topics in this stream because I don't. I mean, I just want to talk about some points that were brought up earlier about oh, religion is evil and atheist countries have are better off and are more moral and all of that. I was like, well, really? Because that's something we kind of touched on earlier, but it's something that doesn't quite make sense to me because aren't those the same group of people that have argued about morality being subjective and now they're telling me oh but religion is evil and I'm like wait, religion's evil but morality is subjective. How do you square that circle?
Yeah, yeah. Here's my thing about that. Morality being subjective. I used to think, oh yeah, it's totally subjective, but okay. How can I say anything's morally wrong if it's subjective? So I say it depends on the issue at hand on whether or not morality could be subjective in that sense. Like if I say, hey Ham, you're a fucking faggot. Some people will say that's morally wrong. Some people will be like, he's an asshole, but that's not like morally
Well,
abhorrent.
I don't get how a statement of fact can be morally wrong.
You have a good point there. So,
I mean,
if it's a
unless to be moral, you have to outright contradict the truth. By the way, Ham, you're muted if you didn't realize it. I'm not sure if you're working on your mic issue or.
Hey, I'm
wait,
going to
let
defend
me check.
religion for a sec. Religion isn't actually a bad thing unless it goes to like the far extreme, just like how Islam has gone to the far extreme and people are getting killed for the dumbest reasons ever.
Yeah.
Mind if I interject?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure,
You see,
go ahead.
the problem with religion is its philosophy petrified. Whatever the philosophy at the time is what that religion will forever be. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they're all very reflective of their times of when that religion was developed. And to be fair to religion, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism were all fairly progressive for their
Mm-hmm.
times just because everyone else was just worse. I
I
mean, slavery was a moral, uh, was superior to what they were doing previously in battle, where they just killed everyone.
Yeah.
You know,
So
that's
I
one
would agree
example.
with you that Judaism and Christianity were steps towards being more moral and were more morally progressive than the other. Islam was a regression in
No, it wasn't.
every sense of it. It is a regression. It is going back to
If you
older.
look at if you look
dogmas.
at the history of the Arabian Peninsula, um, things were just worse.
Worse before Islam?
Yeah.
So, okay, so what I see is a steady trend of progress, and then Islam becomes the dominant religion, and then a plateau. So all of these things are like, oh, hey, everything is going great, then Islam comes in, and oh, hey, everything's getting better, that's because of Islam. I don't think that progress was because of Islam. I think the plateau was because of Islam. It's like,
Well,
to say that the success and the Enlightenment is something that they always like. Oh yeah, universities are because of Islam, and this Enlightenment age in that region is Islam. And I'm like,
you're not understanding what I'm
they
saying.
were on track to reach that prior to Islam.
For their times, like during the lifetime of Muhammad, Islam was a more progressive religion
Except
than the pagan cults that already existed.
except when he started butchering the people around him and going more into a tyrannical authoritarian. He basically started copying Genghis Khan at that point. He's like, oh hey, those people don't believe in our religion,
and everyone was doing the same.
So
didn't
how is that
Muhammad-
progress?
I mean, he was.
He built up a religion and then used that religion to conquer the area around him.
He did unify the Arabian Peninsula. He did create order.
Well, so did Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan unified everything that he took over.
Yeah.
Isn't Muhammad a pedophile? Didn't he marry some 9-year-old girl
Yeah.
or something?
I'm not saying that Muhammad and Islam were, morally good compared to our today's morals.
No, but you have to think about it compared to the area around them, and during Muhammad's lifetime, no, it was regression, because you're talking about going from a culture of war to a culture of peace to a culture of more devastation and more war than there was prior to Islam's introduction. So there's this bump. It goes up the hill, hey, things are getting better, and then things go down, and then things skid to a halt.
Once Muhammad, conquered the entire Arabian Peninsula, there was less war because he was in control of everything. There was no one to be waging war. So,
but
in effect, he did pacify warring tribes.
Okay, so then he is the same moral equivalent of Genghis Khan. When Genghis Khan conquered everyone around him, there's no religion involved there, but yes, okay, so now nobody in that region is fighting each other because they're all scared of Genghis Khan and they're under the threat of his I guess kingdom. I'm not really sure if it is a kingdom. It is empire, I think might be a correct term there.
Well, both would be considered empires.
Yes. So they were afraid of him and his empire, the people in charge of it, rather than, adhering to some religion.
I mean, would you rather have, Saddam Hussein still in control of Iraq and the region and not have ISIS and a whole bunch of other terrorist organizations, beheading journalists' heads off and, doing constant attacks on civilians? I mean, Saddam Hussein was an evil motherfucker. But I'd much rather have a strong man in control of the.
But wasn't your claim that Islam made things more, was it morally progressive compared to the region around it? But you're saying that Saddam Hussein, which is a very secular government, was then toppled and replaced with religious governments, and that was steps backwards.
No, it was. Saddam Hussein was a strong man. He was in control of the region.
Yes.
The government today, at first, was not in as much control. They're gaining control. They've defeated ISIS, so they're getting better. But yeah, I would agree that a religious government, any religion, really, is a bad idea.
Okay, so in the chat, Naomi says, I think religion is necessary because some people need to believe in a higher power. to have a moral,
Yeah,
in order to have a
bullshit.
moral
I do
compass.
agree with her.
Not,
To be
not
honest.
everyone, but for so she says in full, I think religion is necessary because some people need to believe in a higher power in order to have a moral compass. Not everyone, but for the most part, the majority. She then also says why
Okay.
religion has always been a thing is because of human nature.
Okay.
I do
Yeah,
agree with her 100% on that statement because of
yeah, humans are a
experience. What I
bad.
believe can, all right, as I said, yeah, I do believe her 100% because from experience, because what I believe can actually make you maybe go insane if you're not, because if you believe that, that's it, there's nothing else, you know, some people can't handle the fact that, possibly once you die, that's it.
Yeah, I would say that I'm in that boat, but I wouldn't say that that is the reason I need religion. I would say that there is nothing else to provide a moral foundation without some type of religion, because everything else is it's standing on it's standing on nothing, and so it's I'm trying to figure
Well,
out where you can
religion
get
stands
that.
on
But
nothing
what about
either.
me, though?
Well,
I mean,
religion would
Religion is
atheist, not moral.
that's
religion.
to
Religion
say
is just a philosophy at the time, just frozen.
that's what you keep
You
claiming.
can't progress
That's what
unless
you
you
keep
just ignore
claiming.
core tenets of that
But
religion.
if
I
there
mean, I got a question.
is, so okay,
Okay, so if so I take this from religion that do unto others as you'd have done unto you, or in other words, treat others how you want to be treated. Something they teach us in
Mm,
school, like an
well
anti-bullying message. Is that
that's
somehow from religion? Like
that
treat
is
others how you want to be
that's
treated?
from a bunch of different religions. The actual one from Christianity is love thy neighbor as thyself, which is slightly, or it's kind of like that golden rule, but it's slightly a better version of it. And the reason I would say is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That means return like and like, right? If somebody treats you bad, you treat them bad as well. If somebody is evil to you, well, then you're evil to them. And in some instances, yes, that's the right approach. In other instances, the correct approach is to treat them better than you treat yourself, because you're supposed to treat them as if they were someone that you loved and you were trying to do the right thing for them. Now, in some instances, this would be trying to do the right thing for someone might be punishing them. I think about small children. If they're reaching their hand out for a fire, yes, you're going to hurt them by smacking their hand, but you're keeping them from hurting themselves even worse in the long run. So the do unto others as you would have them do unto you can lead to situations where you're like, oh, well, I would like a power drill, so I'm going to give them a power drill. And you're like, but she doesn't need a power drill. She hates, she would rather have cooking stuff. It's the mentality of, oh, I like this, therefore you should like it too. And you're like, not always. It's a compromise of
variations of that phrase that's common throughout most cultures.
But the idea is, if you love the other person and you're trying to treat them as if you would love yourself, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself. You want what's best for them, and so what's best for them could either mean, okay, you're doing the wrong thing, it's time to punish you to get you back on track, course correct, or doing something like, okay, I'm going to go out of my way to do something for you, even though I don't know you, even though I've never, even though I don't really like you or that sort of thing, I'm going out of my way to do something good for you as if I was doing it for myself.
Well, even further, too, like if you're a drug addict, you think it's good for you if you just hand drugs to someone else. Well, that's not so good.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the drug.
I think, hold on, I think that there's actually several bases of morality. First off is the classic golden rule. The second basis is rules society needs, such as don't exceed X speed limit on these roads. Then you have necessity and probably several other things, and sometimes those types of things can easily collide.
Okay. So as far as the do unto others,
Collide.
I would like to add an amendum or an addendum. Is that the right word? Yeah, an addendum. Sure. to that. So when you're talking about the phrase that Jesus was actually talking about, he said there's two commandments. The first being love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, where love thy neighbor as thyself. And it means that the foundation for all of that is on God. So without God, the love thy neighbor as thyself doesn't really hold much water. Because at least the way the Bible describes God is everything good and God is everything true. So as long as you're putting truth and goodness as the core, then loving your neighbor as yourself makes sense. If it's just love their neighbor, or do unto others, or love thy neighbor, that could mean if you are a serial killer, like, oh, hey, what I would want somebody to do is go around murdering people. I'm going to do that, and that's going to make everybody... It shifts the perception, right? It makes that morality of the do unto others subjective, which is why it's founded on this is the foundation being that God has set everything that should be moral and everything that you should focus on and do, then treat other people as based on that. So it's a two-part, and they're both equally important, because if you just love God and then you treat your fellow humans like crap, well then that's not really doing what he said, and that's not really showing love for him. And if you just treat your other people the way that you would want to be treated, well, if you're a sadist, hey, I like pain, other people like pain. It's that can come out of that mentality. So the way people apply that golden rule is always, oh, that always means you're going to do something nice. I'm like, somebody could easily take that golden rule and apply it in a situation where in order to be moral, you have to do things that would negatively impact other people. That's what crazy people do.
Yeah, but that generally doesn't happen.
Well,
and in fact, we see religious people violating the rights of other individuals.
Well, like chucking people off rooftops?
Yes.
I mean...
Yeah, or denying homosexuals the right to marriage until 2014.
15, but yeah.
But
that was the government itself, but like I'm gonna say.
And here's the problem with religion.
Well, the other thing is that's not
there is
right.
a justification for all kinds of actions in the Bible. You can justify slavery. You can justify the oppression of women. You can justify rape in some circumstances.
But people only do that if they let religion go to the extreme.
Okay, so the other thing about that is if they're reading the Bible as it's written, none of those is true.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's... Okay, so as far as...
I was talking about the Quran, just for context.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I'm on HUMAne's side on this debate.
Yeah, we got it.
We got you.
Okay. So when you're talking about justification of slavery, it never said slavery was a moral act. That's not written in there anywhere. It's not saying that this is...
Yes, it did.
It's saying...
It's in the Bible. It gives terms and conditions for performing slavery.
Okay.
Jesus said, slaves, obey your master.
Okay, and is that the actual word for slave? No, it's not. If you look at the original writings where it's written in Hebrew, the original word is not the same word as slave, like what was used in the Americas. It's not the same term. What they're talking about in that passage, the word used is something akin to servants, or what's the other word that's used? Indentured servant, right? Yeah. So servant or indentured servant. It's not. It's not the same as a slave is not an indentured servant. Anybody who owes.
Well, what's the difference?
Indentured servant is somebody who owes a debt. A servant is someone who works for someone else willingly. So a servant is like an employee. You can go.
Can an indentured servant leave that service?
Not until that debt is paid.
Okay, so they're a slave.
That's not a slave. A
Yes,
slave is someone bonded to someone for life. That is slavery. Slavery, there is no way of leaving.
So indentured servitude is you're just a slave for this period of time. Okay.
Until you pay off your debt. No, it's not a slave. It's not like you can beat somebody.
Yeah, you're
okay, look at the slavery in the United States.
You're nuanced trolling.
No,
right
look
now.
at slavery in the United States. Okay, indentured servants, their family was not indentured to slavery when they were indebted.
You're nuanced trolling right now.
I am not
You're-
nuanced
you're-
trolling.
you're-
Look at the United
As an
States.
indentured servant, you're still
alright.
a fucking slave.
What I
No,
missed?
because you're
Well, I
fucking
would like-
stupid if you think that. Okay, a slave in the United States, if you had kids, your kids were slaves, and they had nothing to do with it, and they were slaves for their entire life. If they tried to run away, they were either killed, or they were arrested and hanged in front of people, or they were brought back into captivity and chained up and forced to work again. There was no way out. Indentured servants, if you ran away from your master, this is what is stated in the, this is either Leviticus or Deuteronomy, where it's talking about this in the Bible. If you run away from your master and somebody catches you, or that you find this person in your house, you are not to return them to their master. They're actually free at that point. There is no, oh, you ran away from your master, now we're going to brand you and put you back into slavery or torture you. No, if you ran away from your master, that's because your master was a dickhead. That's this type of system they had back then.
Interesting.
So, yeah, this is actually a mandate that if you run away from your master, you are no longer your master's servant. You are free.
Can someone bring me up to speed on this?
The other thing is it says specifically...
And is nuanced trolling on the definition, on the differences between indentured
Dude, okay, fuck you,
and
man.
slave.
If under your definition, we are all currently slaves. I owe money on my house right now, so I'm a slave to the fucking bank. I'm a slave. Hey, where's my reparations? Stupid fuck. Really, dude.
Of course you, like, completely strawman everything I fucking said.
Really, dude. How can you... No, everybody is an indentured servant if you owe a debt to someone else.
We're talking about whether or not religion is evil.
Do
Just
you
for-
owe-
I owe a debt to the bank. If I don't
are
pay
you
that
forced
debt, they
to
take
pay
all of my
another?
stuff. Yes, I'm forced to pay them every month. If
No,
I
you're
don't,
not.
they take me to
Okay.
court.
Yeah, are you forced to obey them?
Are
I
we
am-
talking about the validity of the Bible?
Okay,
Or what?
indentured
Whether or not
servant.
religion's evil.
Indentured servant. You can pay off your debt in any means that you find. If you can go and gamble,
You
get
may-
enough money, and
Are
pay your
you
debt.
forced to obey someone else as
I
an
am
indentured
forced to
servant?
work a job to pay off my dets.
Are
It
you
doesn't
forced
matter-
to obey someone else as an indentured servant?
Yes.
Okay, you're
As
a
long
slave.
as I'm an employee, I'm a slave, according to your
No, you're
definition of
not.
slavery.
Oh my god. Once again, you completely want to, like, strawman everything.
No, that's what you said about slavery. Anybody who works for somebody else is
Are
a
you
slave.
forced
I
to
think
obey
we're-
someone? Are you the
Okay,
legal
oh,
property of
hey.
someone?
Getting stuck
Okay.
on a minor point.
Hang on a second. Legal property and forced to obey. My
I-
boss tells me to do
You
something.
is the one that's
Hey,
stuck
hey.
on this point. I mean,
If my
he
boss
doesn't
tells me to
understand
do
that
something,
Let
or
me
I will
just
lose my
speak
job.
at one point,
slavery is
please.
basically the same thing.
If my boss tells me to do something, or I will lose my job, oh, I'm being forced to do that. That's your definition of
No,
slavery.
you could still quit.
Indentured servants could quit. They still had to pay their debts. They didn't have to serve that master.
They can quit, but they
They
can't quit. Okay.
they could work for somebody else in order to pay off that debt.
We're getting stuck on a minor point here.
Yeah, HUMANE is getting stuck on this minor point.
Well, because you're saying it justifies slavery, and it's not the
It
same
does.
style of slavery. Okay, yeah, it justifies beating your servants and killing them and feeding them to dogs, hanging them from trees to make an example. It justifies putting them in chains, whipping them by posts. It justifies raping their women,
you
right?
can
This is
beat
all
them
things that
half
are
to
no.
death if they-
That's all things that are justified in the Bible. Okay, let's move on because the Bible is apparently this immoral book that justifies that type of slavery.
Actually, I think the Bible is ultimately irrelevant to this conversation a little bit.
But we're
because-
talking about religion in general.
No, like,
Religion and whole, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
if
about
you're going to talk about religion, you have to talk about the Bible, the Quran, the
I just think
Hadith.
I think that's just a useless conversation to have. Like, people can quote line from the Bible all the time. I just think we should just look at the actual
Well-
facts. People,
So the actual
Yeah.
three claims were made. The first was that the Bible justifies slavery, which I do not think it does, because you're talking about two different types of slavery, not the same type of slavery that was
Oh,
exhibited
so you
in the
meant
United
slavery?
States.
Okay.
What? But you're trying to say they're exactly the same. Both types of slavery is exactly the same.
You
The
just
Bi-
said there were types of slavery.
Indentured servant is what you are calling slavery right now. You are putting them both together under the heading slavery. I'm saying those are two separate things, and you are not allowing me that
Because
distinction.
You do not own yourself, and you're forced to obey someone else.
So don't ever work a job because you don't own yourself. You're forced to work for someone
I
else.
do own myself.
Not if you're
As
working for
if I
someone.
work
Not if
at
you're
a
working
job.
for someone else. That's what you just said.
No, oh my God. See, straw man.
Okay,
Straw
so
man.
okay, there's
We're getting
Okay.
stuck on a
okay.
minor
Hey,
point.
hey. So there is a thought experiment by I wish I remember this guy's name, but he's an economist, and so this is what he says. So imagine there's a plantation, has a master and he has slaves, and all day long the slaves work on his fields and they pay the master money, right? Or so they don't get paid anything; they just get paid in whatever food and clothing in order to keep doing the job. Okay, the master decides to be a little more lenient, and now he starts paying them money, and they owe him a certain amount of money per day. So if they work more, they get more money, and then they only have to give him a certain portion so they can actually start building up income. The master gets a little more lenient, and he says, you know what? You don't even have to work on my plantation. You can go work on other people's plantations. And so they do that, and they go off and work on other people's plantations. They're able to earn money as long as they come back to the master, give him whatever his portion of their earnings is. Master gets even more lenient and says, you know what? You don't even have to work 7 days a week. I'll give you Monday through Friday. That's all you have to work. And as long as you're just paying me a portion of it, you can go work anywhere in the world. Just give me your portion of your earnings. And the ultimate question behind this scenario is, at what point do these people stop being slaves?
They stop being slaves as soon as they own themselves.
They never do in this scenario because they always owe a portion to the master.
Yeah, so they're still slaves.
Okay. So everybody right now who pays taxes is a slave.
No.
Hey, no, what?
They own themselves.
No, they don't, because we owe money to the government.
But we get,
Try
we
not
get
paying your
benefits from
fucking taxes. Try not paying your fucking taxes and tell me that you own yourself.
We are not legally owned by the government.
Then try stop.
Getting
Then
stuck
okay.
on a minor point here.
Oh my God, JP, shut up!
Okay.
Unless you're gonna say
If
something.
you're not the slave of the government, don't pay your taxes. You're in full autonomy, aren't you? You're not being forced to do anything. Don't pay your taxes. Right?
Well, if you
Well,
don't,
I mean, odds are you
pay
already
your
did that,
taxes-
'cause tax
there's
day was
tons
17th.
of people don't pay taxes. Homeless people, major corporations.
The billionaire.
Amazon paid 0 in taxes, so I guess they own themselves.
Why?
Yeah, because Amazon is a person, and so Jeff Bezos paid no taxes, and all the employees of Amazon paid 0 taxes, and you paid 0
legally
taxes.
Speaking, Amazon is a person.
Well,
It has the legal rights as a person because it's a group of people, you fucking moron. Ugh.
Which, by the way, I
Okay.
believe is completely wrong.
So if it's completely wrong, then one person has all the legal rights of a person. 2 people put together don't have the same rights as one person. So why would we ever group together?
'Cause
Why would we ever?
they're
Why would I
not
ever form a group?
of people? They're an
Amazon
organization.
is a
Anyone actually
group.
hear me? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you talk. This is just back
Yeah,
and forth between me and
anyway, let's get back
effeminate
on
degenerate.
religion.
Let's. All right, effeminate degenerate.
And
Did you
why
want to say
it's-
something?
You
Thank you.
Lapis, please.
Oh, sorry. For some reason, the stream seemed a bit behind.
Okay. Was that all you wanted to
Yes,
say? I thought you had more. To say.
I wanted to bring up another element to the discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about was this Bible verse from, I think it was, let's see, where are we here? Deuteronomy 25:11-12. If 2 men are fighting and the wife of one of them comes to the rescue of her husband from his assailant, and she reaches out and seizes him by his private parts, you shall cut off her hand. Show her no pity.
That's
Okay.
Deuteronomy 25:11
to 12.
Can you show me the context? Like, seem like a city law.
Deuteronomy, that segment of Deuteronomy, let's see if I can find that for you. It's in miscellaneous laws, so it's just like, okay, let's think of, we have a bunch of laws that we couldn't fit anywhere else. Here's a bunch of laws.
And isn't there something about menstruating women? Oh, you're not.
Yeah, they have to live outside the city
Sit
for
in different
1 week if
seats.
it's a male, 2 weeks if
Yeah.
they gave birth
So
to a
there,
female.
and there's no hygienic reason for that to happen when you're out there in a tribal area,
Yeah,
right? Because
there is no hygienic reason.
So, like, can we look at
Okay.
the, I don't know, like, the social capital of religion? You know?
So you
Huh?
believe you want to look at the effect of religion on society, like saying
Okay.
does it make
I feel like that's the
So,
main topic of conversation.
I'm looking at that passage from 11.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to look at the effects of religion on society, you compare Saudi Arabia to the UK. UK is much more secular. They have a much higher standard of living, much more freedom, much more
okay.
overall happiness.
I would argue that the more of the Christian religions are actually more secular,
Well, yeah,
and they actually have
Christianity-
more wiggle room
So-
to evolve from that as well.
Okay.
Christianity
So-
has been largely declawed for the last 100 years. 150 years ago, Christianity was just as bad as Islam.
Not really.
Well,
I would
But
agree with
the-
you, and I would also say that's because that at that point it was no longer Christianity; it was a Christian pagan hybrid, which is the entire purpose. And I've talked about this previously on the stream. The entire purpose for Martin Luther's 95 Thesis was he was saying these are all the things that are in the Bible that we are doing the exact opposite of. We are breaking all of these rules. We are incorporating pagan religions and rituals into what this is. You have bastardized this religion. It is no longer the religion.
reason why Christianity is declawed is not because of the pagan element. It's because we started ignoring the more violent.
Okay,
parts of the
okay.
Bible.
Look at the Book of Acts. The early Christian church, is that the same as the Christian church from 150 years ago? No. The early
is
Christian
the
church in the
today
Book of
the same
Acts.
as the first century Christians.
The early Christian
Absolutely
church
not.
in the Book of Acts, those were the ones being persecuted and
The
thrown and fed to the
Christianity
lions.
has
That
changed
is
from generation to generation.
Hey, Timothy, are you
Just-
are you a Protestant or a Catholic?
I am no. I don't think I will ever be a Catholic because they don't adhere to the dogma of their own religion.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't. They outright
They adhere to it as much as any other Christian.
no.
They just put more.
There
fairy
are
tales.
passages in their own Bible that they do the opposite of, which is again the 95
Yeah, and
Thesis
there's-
points
and there's
out all
elements
the
of the Bible that Protestants do the opposite
No.
of. There's elements of
Okay.
the Bible that Calvinists do the opposite of.
Can we-
Every Christian out there contradicts the Bible in some way. There is no way to have a completely consistent Christian.
like,
Wait, I'd like to expand
Okay.
on that point.
move back
Yeah,
on-
yeah, okay. From your perspective, there is no way to adhere to the tenets of the Bible. So everybody who even tries is a fucking retard. That's okay. We've settled the issue here, guys. There's no reason for any
Okay.
all of these billions of people to be
and
Christians.
See how HUMANE cannot fathom me my anything
No, okay,
I say
because you just said that there is no way, right? You're saying there's no way to adhere to it without contradicting.
contradicting some other part of the Bible.
So
It's like selective hearing.
So every religion that is Christian gets it wrong. All of the sects of Christianity got it wrong. All of them. Every single one of them, because Ham has vetted each one of them. Ham has gone to each one and said, hey, do you guys adhere to the Bible? Do you practice and study it? Do you actually know what you're talking about? Do you make sure that if you have anything that is in violation of the Bible, that you change that practice as soon as it's identified? None of the religions do that, according to Ham. Not a single fucking one of them. Not even the Jehovah's Witnesses, who were so devout to the Bible that they actually don't celebrate Christmas, they don't celebrate Easter, and they don't celebrate birthdays, because those are all things that the Bible has, that those are all religions or rituals from pagan religions, and they're like, oh, as soon as we found this out, we removed it from our doctrine.
Yeah,
That's-
and they
I-
also,
oh, but-
they
but-
also don't
but no.
participate in,
But according to Ham, that doesn't,
retarded reason.
because, okay, from
Because
some retarded reason,
Christianity is anti-science.
because for some retarded,
that's
hey,
not
you just
exactly-
changed your fucking position here. All right, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses did celebrate Easter and Christmas and birthdays up until about 1967. I think that's the correct year. It might be somewhere around that range. When it was identified, oh, these rituals are not in incongruence with what's in the Bible, so we're cutting them out. We're no longer participating in those types of rituals. Now you're saying, oh, well, they don't believe in blood transfusions. Okay, well, is there something in the Bible that would cause them to not want blood transfusions? Well, then they are adhering to the Bible.
Apparently so.
There is something in there.
Because they say, because
Okay.
it's a consistent belief of every
Okay,
Jehovah's Witness.
so tell me how they don't...
And there can be many different interpretations of words.
Okay, but tell me now how the Jehovah's Witnesses are not following to the Bible to their best of their ability. They're just ignoring passages and outright refusing things.
There's a contradiction in the Bible that I've found not too recently. Is God the author of confusion? That's a
No.
That's a contradiction. See, except this is a contradiction that no Christian.
How is it a
can,
contradiction?
I have
account
another
for.
position I would like to
Let
talk
him-
about.
The empirical effects
Yeah,
of one side.
Okay,
In the Bible,
all right. I'm just going to ignore him.
God declares himself to not be the author of confusion, even though he authors confusion in the Tower of Babel. When he authors confusion and having contradictions between reality and the Bible.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Just-
And the like
All right.
30,000 some odd denominations of Christianity. There's a lot of fucking confusion.
okay, can we just...
What, okay, before we go further, like,
No.
let's mute ourselves if we're not talking, so we don't cut each other off repeatedly. This
Well,
is gonna
nobody
turn
else
into
can
shit.
talk.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm
like,
just going to
one-
ignore him. Anybody else want to chime in there?
I would
So,
like to...
see, he can't answer this contradiction because he can't.
Okay,
No.
I had something to say.
Alright.
When he was saying that people like to use religion and misconstrue it and everything, or that they're contradicting, I would say, is that the contradiction of religion, or is that just their human nature of them wanting to pull something out of their ass and actually not know the scripture or anything? So we need to make that distinction as well.
Isn't all religion just pulled out of someone's ass?
Well, that's not
But,
what I'm
okay,
talking
so
about.
all right, but I'm going to end the stream there. All religion is pulled out of someone's ass, so why even bother discussing it? Why even bother discussing whether it's good or bad, because it's all make-believe. All right?
Well, I just... like, I don't
Anybody
really-
have any other topics they want to talk about besides religion?
I don't
Because
really
religion
care
is
about
all
the
make-believe?
I don't really care about the validity of God or the Bible, all that. I just only care about the current effects of our society we're living in. As far as I'm concerned, Christendom is probably one of the best things that ever happened to the West, because under Europe we saw the rise of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, liberalism, classical conservatism, all these other political.
What about the
Well,
Dark
we,
Ages?
we've talked about that previously on this stream, and that had nothing to do with religion or values or culture. It was all about luck and finding old texts. It was all about luck of being surrounded by iron and steel. It was all about luck and had nothing to do with the societies or their motivations at all.
Okay.
So-
Friedrich, what about the Dark Ages when the
So-
Catholic Church was in complete
So,
control of Europe?
Okay. Since I
Dark-
wasn't here for that, because I would
The
be
Dark
really-
Ages? Are you familiar with what caused the Dark Ages and that it was the exact opposite of what you just claimed? It was the Catholic Church was not in control. It was a return to paganism, and also it had something to do with it had something to do with the Byzantine Empire.
They killed pagans as fast as they fucking could during the Dark Ages.
Well, do you know what happened economically in the Dark Ages?
I'll-
Gold went into hiding, and a lot of what happened is they were mixing, I think it was lead or copper with the gold.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
everything
devaluing their
went to hell in a
currency.
handbasket. Yes.
And there was also the invasion of the Moors and all that sort of thing, which is why that led to the Crusades.
But Christianity was in control, so why didn't Europe, become like, why didn't Europe had the same, Christian golden age? Like, why didn't that happen?
Well,
because they went into permanent gold backwardation.
Well, you also
Yeah,
said that the Catholic Church was in charge, and
relevant.
I've already said that the Catholic Church is a combination of Christianity and pagans. So,
Yeah. So why didn't Europe attain new heights.
Okay. So when I have a turkey sandwich and I mix shit into it, why doesn't this sandwich taste good anymore?
You want to answer the question, not drop non sequiturs?
No, that is an analogy. You take something good and you put something bad with it, and you expect the result to be something good and positive.
Well, okay, to make your analogy actually true, you would be adding shit to more shit.
Okay, that's because again you're operating under the assumption that all religion is shit and worthless. So you've eliminated as
adopting Christianity is one of the factors that led to the collapse of the Roman Empire.
Yeah. All right.
Oh.
I have something else. To
you're
say.
operating under a pre-assumption, which you're saying. So everything that Ham is saying is already with the knowledge that all religion is terrible and awful and pointless. And so from that foundation, then yes, the conclusion you would arrive at makes sense. But you can't.
Let's let other people chime in.
You cannot start with that assumption and assume and keep that assumption.
To actually address some of the claims that I've made, honestly.
Okay? Look, we need to let some other people chime in because Frederick Voltaire Bastet looks like he wants to say something.
Right.
The live chat's been pretty interesting. As let me see where it was.
That's been pretty
my
dead
live
on my
chat.
screen. All right.
Yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So Owen says on the chat, he says, "Just look at what Jesus did. He was all for equality and an end to inequalities of society. Take money out of church." He claims that Jesus was a socialist. There was also.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was actually. Jesus was a communist before communism was cool.
No, Jesus was not a communist. I really hate socialists when they claim that.
Yeah, he was.
And communism.
And Ham would know because Ham knows everything about religion because he hasn't studied it.
Did
because
Jesus not say that a rich person?
It's harder for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to thread through the eye of a needle.
So rich churches, like these churches that are like so magnificent in terms of structure, like there's this temple in my hometown. You know, like wouldn't it be hard for them to go to heaven at all? You know, like with these really rich religious people. Jesus. Okay, and then Owen says in the chat, Jesus would hate capitalism. LOL. He saw money and profit as a disgrace to the tenets of Christianity. Wasn't there a verse also as well coming back to
okay.
About there was another verse in the Bible where Jesus said that if you have like extra crops or something like that, or you had crops that fall to the ground, you're supposed to let the poor people take it instead of trying to grab them back from the poor people.
Okay, so maybe Frederick's gonna. I'll let you go.
You go. Just like
okay.
I'm just trying to get on the conversation I'm really comfortable with because as I said before, I'm just more concerned about religion, current effects on current society. I'm not really liking the effects of right now, to be honest.
So
yeah, because religion is philosophy that's petrified.
Yeah, well, as long as that is true. I don't think that is true, but as long as that is true, then everything that you concluded, of course, you are on the right track. You're thinking correctly, but you're starting with a false premise from my perspective. So about Jesus
religion
is
the false premise.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So there's no possibility of religion ever getting anything correct. So there's no. So what is the point of even being in this debate?
Well, religion to me seems to be just a prepackaged, set of beliefs, along with a quote-unquote moral code, as well as various other things, all in a nice package.
Okay,
but unfortunately,
so that's operating under the assumption that there is no God. If there is no God, then you're what you're saying would be absolutely true. It's just a prepackaged ideology. If there is a God,
that there was good that came out of religion, wouldn't you agree there was ever good that came out of religion? Because I can name a bunch of instances there was good.
So much evil too.
There was a lot that there was a lot of good that came out of religion.
I'm not going to excuse Hitler for bringing up the German economy.
Dude, there was a lot of good that came out of religion. I can name a bunch of it.
Wait, Hitler? Wait, Hitler didn't do anything good for his account. But that's a different topic.
That's just
Yeah. Okay, so
that was just a quick fire counter.
I would like to get back to Jesus being a communist, because if you look at his parables, I think he's. Let me see if I can't remember the exact number, but there's at least 26 parables, and of those 26, about 20 of them are talking about money. It's a huge portion
We're probably
of the
gonna
parables.
have to find.
Yeah, if you can get me those exact numbers. I know it is more than half of them are discussing finances. The parable of the sower, the parable of the servants and the talents. So the parable of the man with the silos. There's he's talking about the servants and the wheat. He's talking about the bridegrooms and being prepared. Like, there are so many things that revolve around financial advice. Like, all of these parables, sure, they're talking about a particular area, but it's all financial advice as well. I mean, or economic advice. Is like, oh, if you follow these tenets in economy or whatever, in economics, you're going to have a successful business. But he's also saying this is true of every aspect of life and not just business. This is also true when you're talking about religion, is if you want something to grow, you have to actively work at it. You have to plan on it. You have to invest correctly into yourself and your future. So there's a whole bunch of these parables that all have to deal with economics. Second part of this is Jesus advocating that people give away their stuff to the poor and needy is not the same thing as socialism, where it is mandated by the government that you give away your stuff to someone else. So
it's
personal.
more like a voluntary
Well,
theft.
it is kind of mandating that they do, because it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven.
Okay. So the
So
idea
he's
there
saying you
is a
either-
person has to or else, right? And not just hey, if you want good things to happen, do this. So you're taking it from advice and you're saying that it is force. It's not just an advice or a good way to live. No, it is force. So it's in the same way, this would be like me saying, hey, if you want a better job, you should get your degree in X or Y or Z. You should go into STEM fields. You should get a bachelor's degree in a STEM field, and then you'll have more income than if you'd gone into gender studies. Me saying that is apparently forcing someone to get that degree.
It's not forced when you say it, because you're not a guy. You don't have the power to just throw me into hell.
Okay, that goes back to the inaccurate definition of hell. We've gone over this. So hell is not a place of fiery eternal torment, according to the King James Version Bible and other versions of the Bible.
You're in disagreement with nearly every Christian. So.
Because
Well, it seems to me like Christians disagree amongst themselves. One example, but I mean, it's kind of like, do you believe in the number 42? And then someone would argue, well, you really don't believe in the number 42. And we keep on going on and on and on about whether we truly believe in the number 42.
42 is a hell of a lot more mundane than, eternal fiery torture.
eternal fiery torture is not what the Bible says. And this is the problem with most people who call themselves Christians. They don't actually study their Bible. And I was guilty of this as well, which is why I'm doing Bible studies at the moment, to try to increase my knowledge and try to, there's different ways of understanding this, and when you apply this verse and this verse together, it makes more sense that hell cannot be a fiery pit of eternal torment. It cannot be, given the same scriptures in the King James Version Bible. So that interpretation of it is incorrect. The other thing is, Jesus and God cannot be the same entity according to the same King James Version Bible that everybody else comes up with this Trinity theory from. It can't be according to its own scriptures. So if you're actually doing what you're supposed to do as a Christian and studying your Bible, studying your dogma, studying your ideology, you won't arrive at those conclusions. So a lot of the people who have those conclusions haven't studied the Bible.
You disagree with the Trinity?
The Bible disagrees with it. Jesus disagrees with it.
You're in disagreement with the vast majority of Christians.
Because the vast majority of Christians are Catholic. Catholic is the largest sect of Christianity.
Protestants and Baptists.
Protestants all put together is larger than Catholics, but the largest section is Catholics, and all of the Protestants arose out of Catholicism.
Wait, what?
The Trinity, the idea of the Trinity didn't show up until Catholicism.
Which is it? Is it most Christians are Catholics or most Christians are Protestants?
No, it's most Christians are Catholics.
That's what they practice, in other words.
Yeah, that's the primary, the mainstream Christianity is Catholicism.
I can believe that.
So the Trinity
But
theory
you
comes
just
out of
said that
Catholicism.
Protestants put
Protestant-
together were more numerous than Catholics.
Okay. Because the majority of Protestants also adhere to the Catholic doctrine.
Mhm.
So there is a
So
There-
wow, okay.
there is very
So-
few Protestants that have diverged drastically from Catholicism.
I also want to say that I did hear about the type of hill that Timothy was talking about, and it's not like a fiery brimstone somewhere. So I can.
Yeah.
There-
I don't know where that originated from. It's been that was
It's-
something I thought it was the case or the description for a long time. I guess that was just
No.
That
some
didn't come
folk
about
tale.
till way later.
If you look back at when that started, it's all starting around the same. It's when Constantine, the emperor of Rome, decided that he wanted Christianity to become mainstream and started incorporating it with pagan religions. And one of those pagan customs or one of those pagan beliefs was the idea of eternal torment when you're dead. And that's what he's like, oh, well, there's this hell thing. Let's put those two together. Might as well. Hey, there's the birth of Christ. Well, might as well put that together with the birth or rebirth of the sun god. We'll make a ritual out of it. Hey, there's also fertility rituals in spring. Let's tie that to the Passover, and we'll have an Easter. All of these customs are taken
I
from pagan
do
religions.
think that religion has taken credit for a lot of things that already were, such as various rules. They've taken concepts such as marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken that from society, and then they go around saying, "Well, we invented it."
Well, okay, so taking the Bible, for instance.
The Ten Commandments in the Bible is largely based off the Hammurabi's Code.
Or the other way around, but that depends on your perspective.
The Hammurabi's Code came first.
Came first as a written doctrine, not as an oral doctrine.
No, it literally came first in history.
I think he's saying that because Abraham was the patriarch of Israel, that he invented it first, and that somehow because Israel came, Abraham came from the Mesopotamia, that Abraham's doctrine kind of spread, and eventually Hammurabi learned of it and based his moral code on that. Is that a correct reading of what you're saying, Timothy?
That was my understanding of it, but then again, the Bible goes back. The Bible goes back to Adam not just Abraham. Abraham is the foundation of the Jewish religion, but the foundation of the Jewish religion rests on the shoulders of Adam and all the events in Genesis.
Yeah. Even though we know Adam to be a complete fairy tale.
Because we know this for sure. We've got okay. That's absolute proven. Okay, so then the Bible, we can throw the Bible out.
It was not made within a week. All of life did not originate in some fucking Garden of Eden. There is no Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Well,
So all right. So Christianity, complete bullshit. Ham just proved it here. I don't know why billions of people would disagree with Ham.
Because billions of people are not rational.
Well, let Sammy talk. He's going to say something. Hang on.
I
let
thought
her talk.
this discussion was if religion is evil or not, not rather it's false or not. Just saying.
It should be.
Yeah.
But it's Ham. So if it's false, then it is evil, right? Is that the conclusion? If it's
Well, I mean, no, it's not. I mean, humans are kind of built to believe in like a higher power.
built to, like that's by design.
I mean, they're kind
or...
of not built, but well, I worded it wrong.
Well,
it's human nature.
I would say, again, my question is, if that's human nature,
are
maybe
pattern-seeking animals. They, we try to find, patterns and everything because way back when, if you start noticing that, hey, I see paw prints in the ground. I hear noises coming out of a bush. A fucking jaguar is about to jump out and pounce me.
Okay.
That was a life-saving adaptation or instinct. The problem is that instinct, makes us see patterns where there are none.
There are none.
We falsely believe that, some higher power was responsible for, creating the entire universe, even though at every step of the way we know that to be false.
Well, it's not rather.
We
if
know
it's,
it to be false, so I am.
false or not.
Yeah.
There is no theory of science that has God as a axiom.
Well, I mean, but Ham, you also can't prove that, there may be, we don't know what happens after death. We truly don't know. Okay?
Yeah, we do. Nothing happens.
Oh,
Well,
so we know this.
The mind
Your
cannot
body
survive.
composes-
The mind cannot survive the death of the body.
Well, I believe humans technically, well, as you said, I believe in that, but it makes
Yeah.
you kind of think about maybe the possibility.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, so let's go
maybe
back
the
to this. So
possibility-
I do agree with you there that when you die, nothing happens, because it's actually parroted by the Bible in the book of Psalms and Ecclesiastes, where he talks about the dead think of nothing. So this is something that during the times of David and Solomon, they understood when you're dead, you're dead. You're no longer there. You're not sitting in some spirit world or being tortured eternally in hell. You don't exist anymore.
Well, let's go back to the original.
Wait, which is it? Is there an afterlife or is there no afterlife, HUMANe?
There, according to the Bible, there is a resurrection, but but
So-
until then, the dead aren't there anymore.
So, no, there is no afterlife.
Not according to the Bible. There is a resurrection, and that's it.
Okay,
Well, there's
so
two
once
resurrections,
again,
but
once again,
there is
HUMANE
no
in
afterlife.
complete disagreement with mainstream Christianity.
Look,
Yes.
let's try and keep this.
Because-
let's try and keep this like calm and everything, and not cut off.
Okay.
Like Humane, you said you want to keep this at 90 minutes.
Well-
About 34 minutes left, so let's try and keep this.
Oh,
If
okay.
we want to
Okay.
get our points across, we
Like-
gotta.
Okay.
I
So let's
thought the original focus of the discussion was supposed to be is
about
religion.
whether it's evil.
So,
Yes.
Christianity, Islam, these are all Abrahamic faiths. They're quite similar to one another.
Yes.
So this has started to become a discussion on, are the Abrahamic faiths bad for humanity?
Okay.
And is humane
Well-
mind a bad Christian / against what most Christians believe? I think we should kind of reorient the discussion back to what's bad, like
Okay.
the benefits and positives of religion.
Okay. I like that
I agree.
that critique. So yeah, it's whether I'm a good Christian or not. I'm actually reading it and taking in Bible study, so that should be what Christians do, but don't. As far
You're not
as
religious.
as far as if those Abrahamic religions are wrong or incorrect, then they would be evil. If they are telling people lies, that's evil. I think Ham would agree with me on that. If they're all lies, then that is an evil to tell somebody a lie in order to trick them into doing something they wouldn't otherwise do.
Hey, I
That's
guess I was
just fraud.
accidentally following the plot of the stream.
Okay.
Alright.
So if they are lies, I don't think that they are, and I don't understand where this knowledge that Ham has is coming from, where he knows how the universe was made for sure, and he knows that all the foundation of the Abrahamic religions is incorrect without a doubt, 100%. It's all incorrect, and he knows this, and he's got some information that.
Right there, everything you just said was false, because I never said any of that.
You never said that they were all false, because you just said that Adam in the entire
Yeah.
story of Genesis is all incorrect,
Yeah,
which
and
is the
once
foundation.
again, you
Let's go
have selective hearing.
Thing
The-
of
Without Adam, there is no Abrahamic religions.
package set of all these other things, and
Okay.
the thing
So-
is that is kind of a horrifying thing if it is false or if it degenerates into something where people would say, well, I
Okay.
did this because I was God or my leader told me to do this, which is something that the Nazis had said during the Nuremberg
Yeah.
tribunal trials.
Yeah, just following orders.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Okay. So I know we've been focusing on Christianity and the Abrahamic faiths, and that's probably where most people's knowledge is. So let's talk about another type of religion, Buddhism. Would you consider Buddhism evil?
Wait, what about Stoicism, which is Western Buddhism?
Well,
Okay, so we'll talk about. I don't really know the nuance
I
of the
hope we
difference between
follow-
the two.
Oh my god.
So,
Uh,
so would you think, or according to people who are anti-religion, is Buddhism a bad thing? Is it evil?
Is Buddhism a
I
religion?
don't have parasite Buddhism, so
Buddhism is a religion.
Yeah.
Is it?
Because I've heard controversy of whether or not Buddhism is a religion because there is no actual, deity in charge of Buddhism.
I've researched this subject extensively. It's a subject. It falls under the Dharmic religions, which would be Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism.
Okay. So Buddhism is a religion. Okay.
There's, like,
Okay.
Who was
different
that?
Buddhisms, which are just enlightened.
Ham has multiple personalities.
Yeah, I could project voices out of my
Oh,
mind or something.
yeah, he's also a ventriloquist, and that was his penis speaking.
okay.
Oh shit!
Okay,
I have-
so
I-
I am not really
Disorder.
familiar with Stoicism and what the difference is between that and the idea of Buddhism. Because
It-
Buddhism is the belief in the Tao and reincarnation, right?
Well, one is Western and one is Eastern, and I like the West. I don't
Because
and I
the
hate-
West is the best.
Yes.
Put your
Give the
sister
West
to the
a rest.
test.
Also, I hate the East for a variety of reasons, and
Oh, you hate like
Oh,
most society?
Goddamn Muslims!
Why do you
Wait,
hate the East?
no, the East would be Asia, not necessarily the Middle East.
Yeah, like why do you hate the East?
I hate their society and civilizations partly because partly because their people are horribly submissive to their governments. That's kind of why.
Oh.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah.
the
Well, I think that things like Confucianism, that was more of a code of
Yeah.
conduct.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Yellow Turban Rebellion? Frederick Voltaire. Well, it's a bunch of the people rising up against the emperor, and you see it throughout the Chinese history, these constant religious rebellions. So I don't really see how you can say that the East is all about subservience. What it's about is, there's like, first of all, this whole idea that we're trying to simplify an entire region of the world
Yeah.
into a few select values like subservient to government. Honestly, this just feels like just some silly stereotypes that people of the
No,
West
the
have
thing
of
is,
the
like,
Yeah,
East.
and
Yeah.
I think with the
The thing-
East is they're more family oriented, so it's kind of like my screw up reflects on my family, and it's kind of like so it's kind of hard for the West to understand, but it's kind of like you see concepts such as giri in Japan, which is a set of obligations.
well,
I would think it'd be more of an emphasis on honor and hierarchy.
well, the thing about
Yeah.
China is, the thing about China is it's still an authoritarian state. It's
Yeah, but I think that it's kind of like the thing is, it's kind of like you have the quote unquote patriarchal structures where the oldest male would be the superior, and he would look out for the interests of the family.
Well, the other thing with that is, in order to honor your family, or to be a
Yeah, and it's
to
kinda
do
like
to do
having,
right
like,
by your family and your fellow members is to do right by society. In order to be honorable, you have to adhere to the government. You have to adhere to the societal norms. So if you don't follow the government's mandates, if you don't follow your family or patriarchal mandates, then you dishonor your family. So it's built into the family unit, and it goes all the way from the smallest
but it would be
so
like
individual
it would be
family, like mother, father, and children, up into the what's the word? The extended family, and then to the community, and then to the cities, and then it keeps going up and up, and there's this full chain the whole way through.
Well, it's kind of like there would be ancestor worship, and the patriarch would be not only the father, but also the quote unquote magistrate, and he could do things such as order your death.
Yeah.
For the sake of the family.
For the sake of the family, and then similarly, that magistrate would be subservient to somebody else who's higher up than him, and that other person could order the magistrate's death, right? So it's this tiers of authority, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, the magistrate would tell you who you can marry.
Mm-hmm.
There is no patriarchy in the West. It's a conspiracy theory.
It really is, but that's besides the point.
Well, the thing is,
If
in
you
the
go
West,
back
you don't
100
see that
years or
as
so, there was patriarchy.
Well, it's over. It's over in this point, but anyway.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't agree with that, but that's another.
But I mean, this
Okay.
what I'm
Nice shot.
describing is a concept that's probably lost in the West, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it right.
Well, hang on.
Well, if you're on this stream, you're not doing anything right.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm getting
I
it.
really can't disagree with
Okay.
that.
Okay, so let's talk. So my knowledge, admittedly, of Buddhism is very limited, but as far as I know, no one has ever caused a war in the name of Buddhism, or
Oh,
'Cause that's-
yeah, there have.
so there
When?
have been.
There have been violent uprisings by
For
Buddhists. There
Buddhists?
have been terrorist attacks by Buddhists.
The only one that I know of is where a Buddhist monk set himself on fire in a form of protest. I don't know if that can necessarily qualify as a terrorist attack.
Yeah, I never hear of
Let's
much
see,
of
um,
terrorists.
Oh my god. The chat.
What?
The Google Hangout chat.
One of my roommates
So-
pointed out, or well, my squeaky penis apparently pointed out that there was an anthrax attack on on a train in China some years ago.
By a Buddhist?
Uh,
That doesn't strike you as kind of... That guy doesn't sound like a Buddhist at all, with Buddhists being pacifists.
Yeah,
Did he
that
do
seems
it in the
bad.
name of Buddha, Ham? That's the only thing. Did he do it in the name of Buddha, Ham?
Okay, violence.
He was a Buddhist.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't. Well, did he do it because of the religion, or did he do it because he felt like he wanted to, because he was fucked in the head?
I just learned of the fucking attack.
Uh-huh.
So
Alright, well, do more research. Well, okay, well, do more research
Yeah,
on it, and then come
okay.
back to us about that.
So, I'm reading the article on Wikipedia about it, and it says right here at the top, Buddhism forbids all forms of violence, even in extreme cases of self-defense. So the very the very idea that people are committing terrorist acts in the name of Buddhism, you're like, well, then you're not a Buddhist. If the religion forbids violent acts and you're doing a violent act,
But then,
Yeah.
then the people who did the Crusades were not Christians then.
yeah, I would agree. Yes.
Okay.
They were not Christians in the same sense that they were not adhering to the tenets or the ideology of Christ. They were not following his doctrine.
Well,
Christ
yeah,
said, Christ said,
but they-
"He who lives by the sword will surely die by it."
Doctrine of a religious
Yes.
leader, and they were going, well, I was only following orders.
Called Om Shinrikyo.
Om Shinrikyo,
Yeah, it happened in 1995.
And there's the current,
1995.
the current massacres
AUM Shinrikyo.
in Myanmar are being perpetrated by Buddhists, and the Buddhist priests are justifying it by, they say,
Wow.
well, it's okay. It's okay to kill these people because they're less than us. The Buddha, our Buddhist texts only forbid violence against beings to the extent of sex.
So
it's okay
they're
to kill
saying
them.
those
Or to
those
worship,
beings are less
Baphomet.
than insects
That's the priest's logic in justifying their massacres against
of other humans because those humans are less than insects.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's just a foolish, cynical attempt at justifying bigotry. But that doesn't. I don't blame religion for this. I blame bigotry, which can be ingrained in religion or it can be outside of religion.
Yeah.
Religion is, in my opinion, a neutral force.
Well, and this
Good,
is
it can be evil.
And sometimes religion can be kind of a mouthpiece for society or authority figures.
yeah. So this is my main gripe against religion is it tends to be organized. There tends to be a hierarchical structure, and whoever's at the top of that can and does abuse that authority. This is what I mean. This is what I blame the Crusades on. It's not that the people involved knew what they were doing or whatever. It's the person at the top was using their position of power through their religion to do something that was actually against the religion and was actually outright evil on both sides of that. I don't think so. I think, you know, had the Crusades not occurred, we might have been on a worse off place than we are right now, because the entire reason for the Crusades was that the Byzantine Empire and the Muslims were, I think the Moors were mostly, it was mostly the Moors, were invading all these places, taking over, destroying everything, destroying their entire civilizations, raping their women, killing people, putting their heads on pikes. And it was the Crusades that was fighting back against that spread of Islam and that spread of that empire.
I'd say that Islam's march into
Christendom,
whatever,
Yeah.
was mostly stopped, at least in the West, by Charlemagne. And then the only thing that maybe could qualify as a renewed presence of Islam was that they were constantly fighting with the Byzantines, who the Catholics even hated.
Well,
These heretics.
Wasn't the Byzantine Empire predominantly Muslim as well? I didn't. It's from my understanding.
What?
No, they weren't.
If the Byzantine Empire was Christian.
Yeah, the regions. I kind of see where you're coming from. You're thinking of Turkey nowadays, which is Muslim, but at that time Turkey was a Christian country. Only when the Muslims conquered it did they gradually convert to Islam.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Byzantine Empire that was spreading out and was taking over everything, which caused the backlash from Europe, that wasn't predominantly Muslim? So then why
No,
were
it
the
wasn't.
The Byzantine
no,
Empire was in steady, constant decline. They weren't invading. They were struggling to maintain what little they had.
They conquered a lot. Like
this
a
is
bunch of
shit
land
I
at
learned
one
in
point,
high
but
school.
then-
Yeah, so
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
contradicting.
I'm learning this right now. Actually, I've already kind of went past this.
So
a
the
few months
Byzantine
ago,
Empire
but-
was not growing at that time, but
No,
so
they were shrinking,
there was a
so
time
they were shrinking.
They were growing.
So
The
the
Byzantine
Moors
Empire-
were a different group, were a third faction that were spreading.
No, I could tell you this. I know about this. I could tell you this. The Byzantine Empire at one point did grow, and then eventually it died down like crazy because it got invaded by it was like what was it? It was like I think it was like different religions.
Weren't they fighting
and
the
other
Persians?
groups. I think
they were fighting Turks.
Well, hold up.
At first, and then it was the Fatimids.
No, they were fighting. I think they were fighting the Sassanids.
Okay.
Oh, let me see.
Oh no, that was
Double check this.
The Sassanid Empire was pre-Islam, and it was beaten by caliphs, which were a successor to Muhammad.
So
Then replaced by a succession of Muslim emirates, technically ruled over by the caliph, and then it became, I think it was it would either be the Seljuk Sultanate at that time who was fighting with the Byzantines. Then when they drove out the Byzantines from Anatolia, they went down into the Holy Lands, which are being ruled by an Egyptian caliph, a Shia family called the Fatimids.
okay.
It's quite a complicated situation, actually.
With lots of
Okay.
individuals. Sorry, I had to.
But as you said, but no, the Byzantine Empire wasn't Muslim at
Oh,
all.
it's the Ottoman Empire is what I was thinking, right? Because the Ottoman Empire.
The Ottoman Empire was way, way after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they eliminated the Byzantines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ottomans started during the 1500s, and they lasted all the way up to 1918.
Yeah. So that was the Third and Fourth Crusades.
Yeah, well, didn't one of the Crusades?
So the first and
actually...
second dealt with the Byzantine Empire, but the Byzantine Empire was fighting alongside the forces from the Pope.
Well, wasn't it the People's Crusade where they actually attacked and sacked Constantinople?
Well, the People's Crusade, I think
that
it
was during the
kind
Fourth
of-
Crusade.
Well, I think that was where people were just moving around and they painted it as a crusade when it really wasn't. At
Wasn't
least
it
that's-
the
second crusade that like had the most success, where they actually took over parts of the, or at least took over most of the Holy Lands.
Yeah. I am not sure. I guess my knowledge of the Crusades is very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Corrupted, because it's been a while since I've actually looked over and read all that. And I'm like, man, I was like, man, there's four Crusades. Holy crap! I only remember there being two.
There were
But
two.
maybe
No, there's a bunch of crusades.
yeah, there's at least four. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember there
'cause-
being like at least 8 or 12 crusades.
12.
Oh, God.
I remember about maybe 6, 7. From where I
Really?
remember. I learned
Like,
about this stuff.
how many- how are they dividing those?
Stuff, like literally
Because-
3 months ago.
Because it was like an expansion of one area, and then the Crusades were okay. So one force, I'm not quite sure what to start it off with. I was trying to figure that out. Started expanding their territory, and then the Pope was like, okay, we need to stop this, and so they came and pushed them back, and then they started taking more territory, and then they just kept going back and forth for a good couple of centuries. Is every time it went back and forth considered a brand new crusade? Because there was periods,
I think
there were
so.
periods in between of several decades where nothing was happening, where they stopped fighting each other for a good. That's what I would say would be a crusade. End of crusade is when, okay, we're tired, we're gonna take a break, we'll come back in about 50 years and we'll start again. But that 6 or 7 crusades, that seems insane.
About that much, yeah, because I learned about this stuff like 3 months ago. But,
Yeah. Okay.
It's gone. It went on for like a very, very long time. But
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Several centuries, but
The Crusades were, I believe the Crusades were actually instrumental in kicking off the Renaissance, because they gained control of ancient Roman and Greek texts, which created a Renaissance. They had all this old information that they lost.
okay. All right, and so we're getting a little back off track. So let's go back to talking about, I guess, Eastern religions. Because I
By the
mentioned
way,
Buddhism.
apparently there were
specifically.
9 Crusades, a total of 9.
Holy moly!
I was close, but I said about 6, 7.
Yeah, I was way off because I only remember two big pushes. Like, and those are the ones I remember. I guess maybe that's.
Well, so, certain Crusades were bigger and smaller than others,
Yeah.
Yeah, they
and most of all of them were largely failures.
Yeah.
were. There was
Okay.
a lot of Templars.
So back towards
also watching
more
that
talk
from
about like Eastern religions. So with the very odd Buddhist terrorist, like that's an oxymoron, isn't that? Like,
Just like feminist Islam is an oxymoron. LGBT Islam is an oxymoron.
If you interpret any religion a certain way, you can justify literally anything.
but if the religion's
Exactly.
no, if the religion outright says you can't use any type of violence, not even in extreme cases of self-defense, you're not allowed to. Then
But
how can you possibly then justify terrorism?
you might interpret in such that, oh, these people are not humans, therefore it's not violence when you attack them, or some kind of weird justification like that.
But isn't that
Yeah,
just somebody shitting
and
out of
just
their
about
ass?
every religion you can do that. And you can even justify
But
doing.
and you would say that is a fault of the religion, or that is part of the religion itself? That doesn't make any sense. That's like saying I can okay, so I can be a scientist and I can use scientific theorems to you all would be against me if I talk about global warming, so let's try to pick I can use science to prove flat earth. I can use science to prove flat Earth. So is it we should get rid of science because science allows me to use scientific principles to prove flat Earth?
Here's the thing.
That's
if you interpret a different way.
yes. If I interpret science incorrectly in the wrong way against the way it's, and I use that to prove flat Earth, how is that? You would say that isn't a criticism of science. That is should be a criticism of me.
Science is
And yet,
empirically demonstrable.
Well, okay, you're not applying the same
It's
standards to
philosophy.
religion then.
I have another analogy.
You're not applying the same standard when it comes to religion then.
It is
Let her
it's a completely
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Sam?
with when we're saying, oh, is religion evil or something like that, are we going to blame the tool or the person? Like, for guns
makes sense.
instantly. Are we
Yes.
going to say, oh, well, that gun's evil, or are we going to say, oh, well, the person's evil for,
I
using
agree,
the gun
Sam.
to do evil
But
Yeah,
things?
I
Sam
mean,
makes
you
a
can
great
do
point.
both.
Yeah,
Okay, wait.
that was a good
If-
point,
a
Sam.
kind of legitimacy if you
Okay, wait.
base it off of a religious text.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
It lends the violence a certain amount of legitimacy if you interpret it for nefarious ends.
No, it doesn't. If it's contradicting to the, like with Buddhists, where it outright says, well, and actually I would say Christianity as well, when there's several passages where Jesus talks about not doing things in a violent manner. And
Yeah,
to do
but-
things in a violent manner in the name of Christianity would then be against the tenets, or against, it wouldn't be very Christ-like if you're not following what Christ would do in that situation.
Well, the thing is,
okay,
it doesn't seem like the majority of Christians care particularly because, Donald Trump got so many votes from evangelical Christians, and the Republican Party
Okay.
prides itself on being a party of God. And yet, from what I can see of their principles in terms of war, it seems to be that they're very, like, the furthest thing you can get from following the Bible.
Oh yeah, you can
Yes.
listen to
Okay.
these Christians justify, Trump being an adulterer, and they'll justify, oh, that was him before he became a Christian, or we see
Okay.
God in Donald Trump. You can watch these motherfuckers, literally, play mental gymnastics in justifying their.
Okay.
If Obama did
so-
it, they
so-
would.
Yeah,
And-
true.
about
and
it.
you
So
can
now
use
it seems as if your argument is that because there are hypocrites, you should blame the doctrine instead of the hypocrites.
I say blame both.
Yeah.
Blame both.
I mean,
Because
some tools
Okay,
are a lot
so
easier
can
to
I-
use to, cause harm.
Okay,
Sure.
so-
An AR-15, can cause a hell of a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Where, a screwdriver can theoretically cause the same amount of damage, but it takes a lot longer and it's a lot more difficult.
and now
Well,
then.
it seems to me
Anyway,
that religion itself often says you should not question.
Yes, dogmatism.
okay.
And you find that kind of thing even with some extreme ideologies.
Communism.
Okay. So the
So
same.
you are not supposed to question why I am justified in killing you if I believe in the number 42, for example. I'm just making this up, but you get the point.
Well, then you're not like I'm not sure which religion you're talking about specifically in that instance.
No, I
So
was just using the
when you're
number
saying that the
42.
religion says to not question, when there's various passages in the Torah and various passages in the King James Version Bible where it says you're supposed to study the scripture, you're supposed to look through the word, and you're supposed to pray about these things. You're supposed to make sure that you're following God and not the works and not the orders of men. That's specifically in both of those religions where they're saying don't blindly follow other people, make sure that you're following God.
I think with the
Like you
Catholic religion, that's more common with don't question, because during the times that you would have the interpreter that would interpret
Yes,
everything for you.
And you do see that
would
type
be the
of
majority
thing
of it.
even
Oh, yeah.
with Protestants. You see this don't question type of thing as well.
And let's not forget
Okay.
that for most of human history, the majority of people were illiterate. They
Yeah.
could not read.
Yes.
That really only
So-
changed since the beginning of the era of science.
Or the printing
Or the
press,
printing-
where the first
yeah,
book
printing
that was
press,
printed
too.
on it
Yeah.
was the King James Version Bible, but religion has no benefit at all, because that wasn't the goal of Gutenberg to get that out to as many people as possible. So
Well,
let's take this back a second. You said, okay,
Rather than the Bible.
so you were saying that there are hypocrites in religion. Therefore, we can blame hypocrites and the religion itself. So can I make the same argument? There are hypocrites who call themselves scientists. You would call them creationist scientists, or they call themselves creationist scientists, but according to Ham, they are hypocrites who practice science. So, can we then criticize those hypocrites and science itself?
The problem with that analogy is science is objective. There is no if, ands, or buts about it.
Religion is not objective.
Hold on a minute. With science, you have, can we reproduce these results?
And we don't have the same thing with religion?
Yeah.
Apologists would very much disagree with you on that.
Religion is philosophy. It's all in the mind. It's not empirical at all.
Okay, so philosophy is not empirical now.
Well, science tries to make...
Depends on your philosophy, right?
Well, it seems kind of odd that philosophy would not be empirical, and yet science arose out of philosophy. But why would science arise out of philosophy if philosophy has no requirement for empirical data?
Because science is methodological naturalism.
Well, it seems very odd that Socrates would actually encourage people to test things out. So,
well, science relies a lot on certain types of measurements, such as the amount of force an impact would have. They can measure that. We have what's called some measurements for things like the Richter scale. We have even a simple ruler, and we try to measure various things in science. So if we get reproducible results.
And the reason we need those reproducible results is to prove a theory that arose out of philosophy. It's to test a philosophical theory.
It's to test whether or not something that we say is happening,
yes.
or what we call a hypothesis.
And we get that hypothesis through philosophy.
Philosophy is pretty much the curiosity that created science, in other words.
Yes, yeah, the hypothesis comes from philosophical understanding. We're thinking about something, this happens, I wonder why this happens. Let me come up with an explanation that describes it. Okay, how do I test to make sure that my explanation is accurate or is valid? Okay, I need to have some way of testing it, which is where science comes in. You test your theory, you either prove it or disprove it. Otherwise, you can just have all these theories and be like, well, it's true it's true because I say it's true, which is the exact opposite of what people like Aristotle and Socrates were fighting for, because they criticized other people at the time who came up with these weird theories like, oh, it's the spirits behind these sorts of things, and like, well, you can't prove or disprove that, and we just have to accept your word blindly. They call them the sophists and things like that. So they're like, okay, I have a theory about this is the way something works. In order to prove that, I'm going to create an experiment to demonstrate that, yes, this is what's going on here. This is my explanation of why this happens. We can prove.
Also observe behavior. I mean, you look at science also comes from various types of observations, like we watch animals in their natural habitat, and of course we watch various things such as items falling and dropping to the floor, that kind of stuff.
Okay. And I just want to comment on, the Lapis says, honestly, I don't think the East-West divide is a useful concept. No, it's not, because it's the same problem with all kinds of generalization. It's not all people in the East think the same, act the same, have the same cultures in society, and not all people in the West have the same. Usually when you're talking about the West as overall, there are certain...
Hashtag not all.
Yeah. There are certain aspects of Western culture that you're like, yes, that is typically a Western idea. Like free speech is more associated with the West. The idea of liberty and freedom is more associated with the West. But if you look at certain countries that are considered the West, you can see, oh, well, England and Canada right now are cracking down heavily on free speech. Yet they're still the West.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think Lapis is disagreeing with that.
Oh, you don't think they're cracking down on free speech?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some nations, it's kind of like, if I want your opinion, I will give it to you, and if you don't accept it, I will kill you. That's
Yeah.
the way some societies are.
Like Thailand, if you criticize the king, you go to jail.
Yes.
Like
So
Anyway.
what
Oh, yeah,
the
the
UK
whole
did? So what the
famous
UK
knee
did with
debacle.
Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner and Lauren Southern, you wouldn't say that's a crackdown on freedom of speech?
you mean they didn't let them into England?
Yeah, because of their political views.
No, because Lauren Southern's a terrorist.
Well, what I think it is,
Well, it,
No,
well,
seriously.
Okay, wait, no. It's okay. Listen to Tommy Robinson talking about this, where the UK lets in actual known terrorists several times, somebody who has been deported for various reasons, who came back in and went on a killing spree. And you're telling me Lauren Southern is a terrorist that the UK needs to keep out?
They need to keep out all of them, including Lauren Southern, because she tried to shoot down a refugee boat with
No,
missiles.
what? With missiles, yes. She, an immigrant or somebody who came in legally from the UK from Canada, had missiles on a boat, and they
She
were
had
shooting
flares
them
shot-
at
She shot flares at a boat, and
No.
I don't know if they actually hit the boat, but she came pretty damn close. I would say that it would depend on her motives, but I would generally, declare that an act
Well,
of terrorism.
I think what it is Lauren Southern was turned away when she tried to visit England.
Oh shit!
She was put into detainment, and
until probably the next flight back to Canada.
And
Yeah,
Martin
let me put
Sellner
it- let me put it
and
in
Brittany
this way.
Pettibone
A
were
country
kept in
can let
captivity
in
for 3
whoever
days.
the hell they want.
Okay, but it's for political reasons, is it not? Okay, Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone, tell me what they did that was an act of terrorism that would cause the UK government to keep them in for 3 days, if that wasn't purely based on their politics. She was there just to interview Tommy Robinson, and he was there just to give a speech at the, was it Freedom Corner? I think that's the name of the place, Freedom Corner. I'm not familiar with the UK.
Yeah, well,
So-
I'll tell you something. That the U.S. would also hold. Well, if I was a Brazilian citizen, and and the U.S. decided to deny me at the border, they would hold me until they could get me back to Brazil.
Okay, but would they do so for your political reasons, for your ideology, for what you're saying?
Some nations would.
And it's typically Western countries. That's the entire purpose. Is we're talking about Western countries that it should be.
Some nations would do that.
The UK did that. That's the entire. There's no. I'm not sure how you could get any other conclusion out of that.
Between that and say ordering an execution or holding
I
someone
get that.
for years.
I get that, and what you're talking about is that's not typically a Western philosophy of holding someone for years because of their political view or their freedom of speech. It's mostly in the Middle East and in the East. That's commonplace, is it
I just
not?
want to say, guys, nice talking to y'all. Talk to y'all
Alright, have a
later.
good night.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty.
Nice.
Yeah. So in the East and in the Middle East, it's kind of commonplace to have somebody locked up for their political views or what they've spoken out loud against a political leader or something along those lines. In the West, it's typically not the case, and yet we're seeing crackdowns on that.
Yeah, but do
That's-
they get to choose their rulers in the Middle East?
Do they get the
The
what?
people, do they get to choose their rulers and make their own laws based on their own morals?
No, typically not. That's
And
more of a
why?
Western idea.
Why do you... well, the Middle East started like... If you look at early Mesopotamia, they were quite democratic. It just turned into monarchy
Yes.
over time.
Yes.
But anyway, that's besides the point. But
But,
who imposed the dictators on the Middle East?
again, I would blame that on Islam. That seems to be the general tenets of that religion is you need to have some kind of person in charge of it, which
Okay.
if you're looking at the early church, the book of Acts, there is no central leader. There shouldn't be, and that's actually what the apostles set up and what they were talking about, is there was no leader of the church. And yet, for some reason, we got into this, or the church developed into what we have as the Catholic Church right now, or like that's the main form of Christianity that everybody calls mainstream, has the Pope in charge. The early book of Acts, Peter was not in charge. Paul was not in charge. they would go around to different churches and admonish them or praise them based on how well they were doing and whether they were following the religious scriptures or the teaching of Christ. And like, hey, wait, this isn't following the doctrine. You guys got off track. Let's put you back on track, sort of thing. They were not in charge, though. There was no central figure giving out and saying, hey, you're going to have to do this or else you're not a part of the church, or we're going to excommunicate you, or it was nothing along those lines. I mean, that's what the entire New Testament, like the first 4 books is the Gospel of Jesus, and then there's the book of Acts, and then everything else is apostles going around to different churches and saying, you're doing this correct, you're doing that incorrect, you're not following the scripture here, you guys are getting lost in the details, you shouldn't be fighting over this has nothing to do with salvation or Christ in general. The only thing you should be talking about is Christ, and you shouldn't be worshiping one of the apostles or praising or looking up to any person. Your goal, your focus is be like Christ. That's the only thing you should be doing. You're being like Christ and teaching other people how to be like Christ. That's the and then Revelations at the end is talking about the end times and all that. But all the rest of it is talking about basically setting up the baby church. And if you look at those, if you read those, and you're trying to get, how did they get the Catholic Church out of this? How did they get an organized religion out of this? I'm not sure where that comes from.
Well, I think there's something called the Michael's Law of oligarchy.
Yes.
Where you have a hierarchy that forms because you need people that will do various things, and it becomes specialized.
Okay. And so I would agree with that, except that...
And these people become kind of the elites, and then it gets passed to other elites. And, of course, most people are followers, so they'll just go along.
Yes.
And they probably don't care where we get the coffee for our meeting.
Yes. So I understand. I get the idea that you're talking about, but if one of those leaders goes against the tenets of the religion, that should be the huge warning sign of like, wait a minute, you're not following the religion anymore. That's something else. You're using your position of authority or your elite status to take people away, which is the majority of what Paul was writing his books about, was saying, hey, you guys are supposed to be, you people are following you because you're those people look up to, and you're steering them off the path. You're steering them onto your own understandings or your own doctrines. That has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with salvation. It's constantly what Paul is telling these churches. Like, hey, wait a minute. I never told you that. That's not that. Where'd you hear this? This has nothing to do with anything that I've told you, anything that any other of these the apostles are telling you. Where are you getting this? Is outside of the doctrine. You guys are straying off the path, sort of thing. That's what you. So other people should be doing the same thing. It's like, hey, wait a minute. You're not sticking with Christianity. Where do you guys? You guys are way off in left field. Get back on the path, sort of thing. At least when it comes to religion, and I would say the same thing. This seems to be somewhat common when you're talking about Judaism, because there are Orthodox Jews and different sects of Judaism as well, and they have touring rabbis or whatever who'll go around to different synagogues and like, hey, wait a minute, you guys aren't following. From my experience with you guys, this is where you guys are messing up. You guys aren't following these passages.
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro does this a lot. Well, he's an Orthodox Jew, but I don't think he's he's not an actual rabbi. He's not actually teaching people about Judaism. He just practices it.
No, he teaches the next best thing, republicanism.
All right, so we're over the hour and a half mark. So, but I mean, I don't know. You saw the title of my stream, hopefully, where it said, "Morality is subjective, but religion is objectively evil." That, to me, that concept doesn't make sense because Ham was just on here, and Ham is one of those people who argue that morality is subjective, and he was on the case where talking about how religion is evil, and how he.
I don't think religion is evil.
I mean,
well, morality itself can be very flexible, and as I try to say, there's actually several bases of morality.
I'll say this, that it's
Just
still
that
in the context.
Okay,
I don't
it's
think it
And
is.
that it's from one place.
Okay,
when it's
so
actually several.
I mean, I still have time tonight, so although I'm shooting for the hour and a half, and we've gone over that a little bit, I do want
I will
to,
say,
because I do want this to be the last stream about religion. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll take 10, 15 minutes to talk about those, because I did want to go back to that. So the first one you mentioned was the reciprocal, right? Like do unto others type thing.
Yes.
I'm like, well, if you are of a mindset that you like pain because you are a sadist, then doing unto others would mean that you should be going around causing pain to others. That would be perfectly moral given that argument.
that was,
Would it not? For
I
that
think
end
with
of
that, yeah, it's too subjective. There's too much wiggle room with that type of thinking, because people can do harmful stuff to themselves all the time and would think of it to be good for someone else when it in fact isn't.
But as I say, there's actually several bases
Okay.
of morality, such as rule. In addition to reciprocity, you have rules of society that
Okay.
help it function.
Okay, so let's address that one. So does that mean that every rule a society makes is moral?
And how are you going to get people on board with those rules
Well,
too?
Well,
Without
I mean, so if it's something that helps society function, then that rule would inherently become moral. So something that helps society function back in the day used to be slavery. So according to that understanding of morality, slavery at the time was moral. Then how did it ever stop being moral?
When it stopped functioning for society. Although I don't agree with this argument, just to let you know.
I don't think it ever functioned for society, but that's just me. I think it was a common occurrence. And
Congratulations! I think you found the one thing that we can agree on.
So this I'm gonna tie this back to the Bible, and I know most of you probably hate Dennis Prager. I think he did a very good job talking about the idea of.
Just a question: does the Bible say that you can't exceed so many mph on a road?
No.
Doesn't the Bible also say something
it doesn't say anything about miles per hour on a road. I was tying this back to slavery because, I mean, I listened to this. So Dennis Prager, when he's talking about slavery in the Bible and comparing it to slavery in the United States, how the two systems are completely different, and how what the Bible talks about slavery is a step forward from what slavery was like in all the other countries around the Israelites. So all the other tribes and all the other areas around the world where they practiced slavery, their version of slavery was more akin to what was practiced in the United States. The versions that the Jews practiced is more akin to what I keep calling indentured servants or just servitude. There's a whole bunch of restrictions and rules on what they were not allowed. And at the time, that was a step forward to being more moral than the societies around them. And if you look at everything from Numbers and Deuteronomy and Exodus and all the laws that are mentioned in those passages, and also Leviticus, it steps on, okay, this is where we are. In order to become more moral, we have to move this way. So we're putting these laws in place to become more moral than we currently are. And that's, if you read through the Bible in chronological order, it seems to be the common thread is, okay, we start off being very immoral, we're trying to get more moral, and then at the end, it gets to Jesus, and it's like, okay, if you follow these, then you'll be as moral as you can be. And you couldn't be this moral prior to this point because you were so far behind. It's like, if you tried to jump from 0 to 100, you're not even going to bother. So instead it's broken down into steps, so that way, okay, we went from this completely immoral to slightly moral to more moral to, okay, now we've got a way to become absolutely moral according to the Bible. That seems to be the trend, and I don't know why a bunch of people who criticize the Bible are like, oh, no, that's all evil and it justifies all these other things. I think that is a very...
Well, just look at the Western world, and it seems to follow that pattern as well.
Yeah,
the progression of the Western world.
That's my reading of the...
How I see it.
Okay, so that's my saying. I mean, I had the same understanding of the Bible growing up, And I was like, oh, hey, Dennis Prager, he's not even a Christian. He's a Jew, and he's talking about all these sorts of things. He's, again, talking about the Torah, the first 4 books of the Bible. And that's his understanding and his impression as well. So I'm like, oh, maybe I wasn't that far off if other people that I respect and look up to are also coming to these same conclusions.
Excuse me, I've got to go get some coffee.
Okay. Oh, but before you go, what was that was addressing the idea that a society makes things moral. Because he said there was 2 more, if I'm not mistaken. So I want to address those because that's
what about
something.
Utilitarian.
Okay, utilitarian. What could you?
Provides the most happiness for the most.
Okay. Well, again, to go back to someone who's a sadist, the most happy they apparently are is when somebody is beating them.
Yeah, so
So
what would make
then
society
by-
most happy would be to stop that. The maximum number of happiness for everyone.
Wait. Okay, so someone who is a sadist, they get their joy out of being beaten. So then, generally in society, it's immoral to beat somebody, right? It's assault. But for someone who is a sadist, then it would be immoral to not beat them.
Yeah.
For someone who is a let's see, what's say. There's a word for this. So somebody who has a rape fantasy, hey, apparently for them, in order to be moral, you would have to rape them. That doesn't seem like a very...
because that would reduce the happiness of the person being raped.
Well, no. If the person wants to be raped, right? There are people with rape fetishes. They want to be raped. That's a very... I mean, that's what...
Yeah.
Think about the 50 Shades of Grey, right? 50 Shades of Grey is taught on huge with a large...
And like someone like some random person in the street like raping you.
Okay, so but in that case, the story of 50 Shades of Grey that apparently a lot of women have been absorbed with and has attracted them. There is that element. Oh, so in order to be more moral, you would have to practice BDSM with your partner. That would be a moral thing to do, and it would be immoral to not practice BDSM with your partner because then you're not fulfilling their ultimate happiness.
Well, like it would also if it restricted your happiness, then why would you do it as well? You know, you'd go out and try to find someone who's mutually compatible with you. You know, you both enjoy BDSM instead of having one person having
Okay, so if 2 people enjoy BDSM, then the utilitarian argument is then it's okay to beat each other up for sexual gratification.
Yeah.
It's a very odd standard of morality.
Like
as
how,
long as it's
how does
consensual.
it like damage them permanently? Like how does it harm them?
Well, I don't know if you've seen some stuff on the internet, but there's a lot of things that are done consensually that have very, very long-lasting damage. Like there's certain videos of glass objects being shoved up orifices and then breaking, and
Oh god. And also, you can really screw someone up if you don't know what the hell you're doing.
No, and apparently people do these sorts of things willingly. Let me take a less extreme example. There is an entire, I don't know if it's still actually, it's called Break.com. It was really popular in the 90s and early 2000s. The entire purpose of Break.com was people would post videos of them injuring themselves. Like taking fluorescent tubes and smashing it over their nut sacks, taking watermelons and dropping it on their balls, driving, riding BMX and jumping off of the bike and just flying around and hitting whatever they hit. There are hours and hours of this type of content.
That and BME Pain Olympics. Oh my god.
So according to the utilitarian argument, that's okay. That's perfectly moral behavior. There's no problem there whatsoever if they continue to do that.
Well, if they don't kill each other and they derive happiness from hitting each other, and they remain a perfectly healthy human being.
Okay,
Okay, my question now is, whose utility? Because obviously somebody taking a fluorescent bulb and smashing it over their nutsack, maybe it makes them happy because they get YouTube famous or whatever, but does that help society as a whole, or does that help their family? Does that help their loved ones? Does that help their their girlfriends or their spouse who wants to have children? And no, you damaged your nuts, so you can't have kids now.
Maximum society, right? trying to produce the maximum, greatest happiness for the greatest number is what utilitarianism is about.
Okay,
if in pleasure they cut off like their legs, that would be an immoral act because it would deprive them of the ability to work and feed their family, even if it provided them with pleasure.
So in the same instance, if you did some kind of BDSM activity that had permanent damage, that would be an immoral thing to do. And if you were injuring yourself for views on YouTube and you injured yourself to the point of causing permanent damage to your ability to reproduce, that would again be immoral.
Well, it depends on I suppose, I guess.
Because you maximum society, I would assume more people would increase the amount of society benefit to society.
If society becomes overcrowded, like say that would decrease happiness because there would be more competition for resources.
Well, I would also like to say, so somebody smashing a light bulb over their nuts doesn't help society, although it might help them get some general instant gratification or something along that lines.
Yeah,
but if you're talking about maximizing what is good for society, then we should outlaw breaking fluorescent bulbs over your testicles, and we should mandate that individual do something like, hey, just go around picking up trash. That'll help society. That's more beneficial than what they were doing. Where wouldn't you get to the point where you're mandating actions and or in the instance of some people being really intelligent and being able to be astrophysicists, and yet they are musicians. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it be more beneficial to society to have that person stop being a musician and do what they actually do, the other thing? Because astrophysicists would maybe be more beneficial to society as a whole, and maybe they're a crappy musician, but they're an excellent astrophysicist, but they wanted to be a musician.
Society, would the advantages of making astrophysics, would the advantages of advances in astrophysics outweigh the misery that would come from enforcing someone's career on them?
Who cares about the individual misery when you're putting the
utilitarians who have said things like that? That the kind of enforced caste system which you're suggesting should be enforced. But there are other utilitarians who disagree because it's you're hurting someone's happiness, right?
But you said the maximum happiness for society.
Yes.
So if that individual has to suffer, but the rest of society is happier and better off for it, then why isn't it moral to have that individual suffer for the greater good?
Depends on the degree of suffering. Depends on
Isn't this is a socialist kind of tenet? So maybe we'll talk about socialism in the next stream, and maybe this will be the jumping or the segue into that. But isn't that one of the tenets? Is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Wouldn't that be a utilitarian argument? Is who cares if that guy's miserable? What he's doing is benefiting the rest of society so much more than his individual misery.
Depends. Putting a murderer away might make him miserable, but it protects the rest of society from his violence.
Okay. And
so from a utilitarian perspective, that would be a moral thing to do. But the sheer amount of misery that you cause someone by forcing them to switch careers, and the amount of misery that produces in everyone, because they have to follow the career that's where their best talents lie rather than what they actually want to do, would outweigh the benefits that society might get from having everyone perform the labor that they're most skilled at.
Okay. Well, that seems like kind of an argument against socialism at that point.
The socialism isn't necessarily like you're forced to do a job.
Oh, you're not forced to do a job? But aren't there quotas and aren't there...
I don't know if you know... What is your definition of socialism?
Okay, well, socialism, right, is you're trying to... so it's a planned economy, right? Are you talking about communism or socialism? Because maybe that's where we're getting off on the wrong foot. Because socialism is a government-mandated... everything is divided equally amongst the people. And in order to give everything equally amongst the people, that means you have to have a certain amount produced. So then there would be quotas of the amount of things that need to be produced, so that way everybody can get an equal share. If there are 1 million people in a society and there's only 100 of something to go around, how can you possibly distribute it evenly? So then you have to have a quota in order to produce 1 million of that thing.
Yeah, I don't think you know what socialism is.
How
socialism
do you define
is
socialism?
Government control of the means of productions, is it not?
No.
Oh, no, wait, I got you.
That's a planned economy.
I got you. Here's what she'll say. She'll say, the workers own the means of production.
The workers owning the means of production is communism. not socialism.
No. Communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society.
Okay. So what is your definition of socialism then?
You mean the definition of socialism that's in the Oxford Dictionary? Yes.
Oh, okay.
The
So
definition of socialism, as the Oxford Dictionary says it, is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's an agreement amongst the
Okay.
community. in
So
other
so there
words.
is no requirement for a government in your
Yeah.
socialism. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what differentiates socialism from communism in your view? Is it just that communism doesn't have money and socialism does?
Communism, you don't need a state to be socialist, but I think that a state would be useful in kind of reconstructing these social roots that have been
Okay.
torn up by the systems of
So
oppression,
okay.
slavery, feudalism, and capitalism. And what we need is a state to kind of facilitate this transition. And under Marxist theory, socialism was a transitional state between the overthrow of capitalism and communism. And it was a period where the state still existed.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be from capitalism to socialism to communism, right?
Yes, in Marxist theory.
Yeah.
But socialism does not
Well-
technically necessitate a state.
But also, according to Marx, capitalism was going to fail anyway, and ultimately turn into capitalism was going to fail and ultimately turn into communism, even if socialism never occurred.
Not Marx I've read. What he said was that the failures of capitalism, the crisis of capitalism, would eventually anger the working class enough that they would revolt, overthrow capitalism, and replace it with a dictatorship of the proletariat.
Which, okay. So it was going to happen even if they didn't enforce the ideas. Right?
You mean
It was bound to happen that eventually capitalism would go away and be replaced by another system.
yes.
So, well, that hasn't happened, and my question would be, if that didn't happen, is it going to happen? And maybe Marx's prediction just hasn't happened yet? Or maybe Marx was completely wrong about capitalism? Is there a third option, maybe? Okay, well, that's getting, I guess, maybe too much into socialism. Maybe we'll pick back up on that next week. Sorry, sorry. I will let you respond. I will let you respond before. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But that's all right. So
No. Let me, because I did pose a question. It seems kind of disingenuous to like, oh hey, I got you, and then nope, gotta go. So I will let you. I meant to talk about the idea of the utilitarian argument, which seems to be an argument from socialism. But that I did make that last point, so I need to give you time to make a rebuttal.
I'm not like. What do you want me to rebut here? That utilitarianism is a socialist thing?
No. Sorry.
Actually,
So I made the point that Marx predicted the fall of capitalism. Capitalism hasn't, and it would eventually lead to socialist overthrow. And that didn't seem to happen. So either it's going to happen in the future, and do you know? Is that your view? Is that eventually it's going to happen no matter what? In which case, then why do you need to fight for socialism?
I'm wary of historical materialism. I don't believe that anything can ever be certain in history, except that things will change.
I don't know what that.
Okay.
Okay, so my question was, Mark made a prediction. It hasn't happened yet.
And my point is that predictions about the future, I'm skeptical of them. That was not that's not the attraction of me that I have to Marxist analysis or Marxism. The attraction that I have is his critique of capitalism. And you might say his critique of capitalism necessitates what you're referring to, which is dialectical materialism. I don't think it necessarily does. That was his critique of history, not his critique of capitalism.
Okay, but if his critique was correct, then his prediction would be inevitable. Like, that's the logical conclusion.
If
his critique was correct, then
if his analysis of capitalism was right, why hasn't why hasn't capitalism collapsed under its
Because that would be the
contradictions?
outcome. So unless the premise is wrong, if the premise is wrong, well, then you could understand why the conclusion didn't happen. But if the premise is correct, the conclusion should be inevitable.
Yeah, but you're conflating two things. You're conflating his economic theory and his historical theory, and thinking that I value Marx much more as an economist than I do as an historian.
But isn't his economist philosophy based on his historical analysis? I don't know how you can separate
I'd
the
say
two.
his history is based on his economic analysis, and that it's not necessary to, like, let me think of another example. You admire the rhetoric of Ronald Reagan,
Maybe.
but
I'm not sure what you mean in particular
and
there.
throughout his own government, he completely contradicted his rhetoric. But does that still mean that his rhetoric is irrelevant to you?
So I'm not sure what you mean by his rhetoric.
So I'm saying,
okay.
Is the ideological foundation of something based on someone's interpretation on it, or is it based on someone else's, on the realization of it?
Okay. So I think this goes back to what we were saying about religion, at least. So if the religion says, "Hey, this is," and then somebody misinterprets it, you can't count that against the religion, but you would. In the case of Marxism, because you think he had this solid foundation of his economic philosophy, and maybe he had an incorrect interpretation when talking about history, but that shouldn't be counted against his economic philosophy. That should just be counted against him.
Well, it's two separate things, right? I'm
not sure, because as far as I know, a economic doctrine and a religious doctrine are both doctrine, are they not? So if somebody's misinterpreting it or using it in an incorrect way, shouldn't that I'm not sure why it should be counted against the doctrine itself.
Rather
right?
than the person misinterpreting, yeah.
But
I still don't get your point.
Because I thought you were saying that Marx may have his historical analysis may have been a misinterpretation or a misappropriation of his economic philosophy, right?
I'm saying that they're two separate things, and that it doesn't really matter if his history is wrong or if his history is right in regards to his economics, because they're two separate fields. It's like if I was to criticize the political career of Winston Churchill based on the quality of his poetry, it doesn't correlate.
That seems like a big stretch. Okay, so economic history and economic doctrine, not related. There's no overlap whatsoever, according to what you're trying to say.
I'm not saying that his economic history wasn't right. It's his economic, his historical predictions which were off.
Which were based on his economic theory. Oh, okay, so this is... All right, so hopefully, I think we're going to have to cut it there, and we'll pick this up next week. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, because it seems like we've completely moved.
I'm sorry for coming in at the last minute.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. But
okay.
I think I have a debate this weekend. I don't know about economics or something. I don't know.
All right.
But
so
yeah,
if you are available next Wednesday, so I did do this on Thursday today, but that's because I had class yesterday. I had to do a presentation. No. Okay, so
I can sense the pain in your eyes, Maine. But yeah,
three morons and one slightly competent guy. That's that. And I was not the moron or the slightly competent guy. I was the only one competent, in my opinion. But maybe that's just me.
So I guess that's where you want to end it. So I guess I'll wrap it up here. Thank you to everyone who joined and those that are currently on here with us. Thank you to everyone who watched. But yeah, closing remarks. I don't think religion is necessarily evil. I think that there may be some texts that say some things, but you have the choice on whether or not to act on those. I will also say that I don't really like generalizing the East as savages or whatever. And as for socialism, well, to be honest, it's just legalized theft, and that's where I'll just wrap this up. But Thank you to everyone who joined, and I hope to see y'all back here next time. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay,
too.
so I'm gonna do my closing remarks if you're okay with
Actually,
that.
you can go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so the idea behind all these streams was talking about religion, and so I'm trying to with my entire channel is get people to think about things more critically. So what I've seen a lot is especially from Ham is just outright dismissing the other side, and I'm like, well, that's not applying critical thinking to it, because in order to apply critical thinking is you have to say, okay, these two things both claim to be true. One of them, either one of them is correct or neither of them is correct. That seems to be the only, because they contradict each other. So in order to determine which one is correct and which one is incorrect, you have to take them both at their word, see if they're consistent internally, which I think they are. I've seen very little inconsistency when it comes to religion, or at least the religion that I'm currently studying. Very little inconsistencies. I may be wrong, and maybe I'm just overlooking them. And some of the critiques that people have brought up, maybe I'm like, well, that seems... I'm not understanding the in-depth critique of that. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can tell from what I've learned right now, it seems to be very internally consistent on both sides. Now, the question is, which one answers more questions? Which one is a better... and in my mind, right where I'm leaning more towards religion, as opposed to the idea that you can get your morals from atheism, and that, you know, atheism and evolution explain how we got here and explain what we're supposed to be doing. In my mind, it makes more sense that religion is kind of searching for, hey, how did we get here? What are we doing? And I like, at least, I think that their explanations for all of this seem to adhere more with reality, whereas the atheist perspective seems to have more questions than answers, at least from what I can tell. There seems to be a lot of things that they take for granted or assume or just take as a given, and I'm like, but you can't take that as a given, because I keep asking questions about the whys behind the whys, and I've always been told that Christianity is the god of the gaps, when I'm seeing it the absolute opposite. It's the scientific, and everything is physical. I'm like, well, if everything's physical, where do you get your morality from? And then how do you get your... And then you just, we just assume that these moral standards are correct. I'm like, well, how do you know if that's going to... or that one situation is better than another? That's the situation I find myself in, which is why I lean more towards religion. Maybe that will change down the road.
The funniest conundrum on this is atheists don't realize that their whole belief of not believing has become their own religion in a sense.
Yeah, that's why I dislike extreme atheists. Is if you don't believe, then that's fine. You don't need to bash people over the head. You're just as intolerant as the extreme religious.
So I would agree with you, and what I'm ultimately looking for is the truth, and the only way to find the truth is to weigh every option that is presented. Because if you just dismiss saying, something as ludicrous or ridiculous without actually investigating it and comparing it, then how can you possibly know if what you know is the truth, or if what they're presenting you is the truth? So the only way to know for sure is to investigate all sides as thoroughly as you can, compare the two, and ultimately make your decision. You may make the wrong decision, but at least you went through the process. So that's what I'm trying to do with this channel, and hopefully I'm getting there. I know I've been kind of back and forth with Ham, but hopefully you learned something, or maybe thought about something from a different perspective.
When you're dealing with religion, also look at the people within religion, the good and the bad, as much as atheists, with the good and the bad in them.
Oh, yeah.
Determine the factors as well.
Yeah, I highly disagree with Christopher Hitchens on a lot of his arguments, but I respected the man when he was alive, and also, I still think that he was a very great individual. The world is worse off without him. Dawkins, not so much. Sam Harris, not so much. Krauss, not so much. Hitchens had a lot of respect for the man.
What about Sagan?
Carl Sagan, yes. Very good guy. I nothing but respect for him. Stephen Hawking's a little... He doesn't really get too much into the... He wasn't really a outspoken atheist like the rest of them. But, yeah, and I actually... without getting too far off topic here, his Brief History of Time was one of the inspirations behind a book that I started writing when I was 14. Never actually finished writing, but...
Do you still have it?
You saw it?
No.
You also
I know because I had it and I had posted the first 2 chapters on MySpace, and MySpace when they switched interfaces on MySpace, they erased all my old information. I have tried to recover it since then, but I can I know the core story arc, so I could recreate it and probably end up making, now that I've got 18 years of experience on top of that, I could end up making it much better than my original draft.
HUMANe
But-
will be rich.
Oh no, it's
Humane, just don't George Lucas it, okay?
yeah, I won't George Lucas. So it was an idea called Spiral, but it was based off of something that because I was reading A Brief History of Time. I'm like, oh, dude, that is so cool. But as far as I know, Stephen Hawking doesn't actually still accept what he's proposed in A Brief History of Time, because now it looks like the universe will just continue to expand, as opposed to what he mentioned was that the universe might be expanding and then contracting and then perpetually in these states of expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting. And we are just one of those expansions. Maybe the first, maybe.
Thing going?
Sorry, what?
How's the serial killer thing going?
Oh,
Okay, so after today, so yesterday was my last class in that one, and I've got a slideshow presentation to make tonight and then post that, and then I'm completely done with school. I'll have my bachelor's. I won't have that time sink anymore, and then I will take the time I was using for school and start researching that.
Yeah.
So that should give me an extra 5 to 10 hours a week. Well, sometimes more, sometimes less. Because this week has been a nightmare. I've spent 20 hours on one. No, because it was. Okay, this week alone, I've spent 26 hours building a program because the other 3 people turned in worthless, useless crap.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I asked for simple things. You guys gave me nothing, and now I've got to work it all together. Yeah. So.
So, how's everybody doing? Lapis, how you're doing?
All right.
oh, I'm okay.
Yeah, so we can continue this after, so I'm going to go ahead and end my stream. Thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully you'll be here next Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's good here.
And something about liking,
Very
subscribing, and all of that sort of thing. Oh, Kilroy is this weekend. I am not sure if I'm actually going to make it to that. I've got my ticket, but I have stuff to do with my house this weekend, so I'm going to see if I can make it down there, but I might not be able to.
Yeah.
All right.
Because
So
selling the house was not a priority when I got the tickets for that, and
Yeah.
All right, but thanks for joining me. I'm gonna hang up now, or at least
right,
in the stream.
All right. So I'll wrap up